Okay, so today we're going to look at some film posters of films, because we need to for the ancillary task, otherwise we're not going to know what we're doing. So I've chosen to look at the Sinister poster and the Conjuring poster. Two there's there, that's awkward. So we're going to start with the Sinister poster first. Let's just drag this one off out of the way a little bit, and we'll get into the meat of this poster. So the first thing that really strikes me about this one is the use of a very bleak colour scheme to really bring out the blood on the walls and its sinister connotations. Yeah, pun intended. One thing I've noticed when looking at a lot of posters like this is that they use a faded wallpaper style backdrop. We can see decay in this background, like up here in these... Wow, okay, like up here in these corners, which evokes the classic haunted house imagery of early horror. The whole backdrop, whilst evoking such a house, is also very unnaturally stylised, with everything being very desaturated. The floorboards being this really horrible, unnatural white are a nice example of this. It shows how very little natural colour there actually is in this poster, something I feel makes the red of the blood far more unsettling than it already is. So, now I've got the basics out of the way, I'm just going to work from the top down and focus momentarily on this little anecdote at the top here. So it says, if we just zoom in on this and increase the window size because I haven't thought this through, from the producer of Paranormal Activity and Insidious. It's quite a simple one to talk about, really. They used a serif font for the reasons outlined in my iconography and titling research. It evokes gothic themes, and the sharp points on the letters make it look more sinister. I really like the from the producers of thing that they've got going on. I mean, it's a really nice way of advertising, because if people don't really know about this film but they have seen other films from the same producer, even if they don't know the producer's name and enjoyed them, both Paranormal Activity and Insidious are very, very popular horror films, they'll be more inclined to maybe check this one out, and I believe they should, because it's actually one of my favourite movies. Not that that's important. As I said many a time, the use of films the producer has actually made before does increase consumer loyalty to this product, even if they haven't seen the product yet, because they might have enjoyed these films that came before. Before we move down, we should probably note the subtle vignette at the top here. This helps make the poster feel self-contained and organised, as well as allowing the white text to stand out against the darker background. The vignette is actually also stylised. It's made to look like paint on the wall, which is a really interesting way of doing things. So, moving on down a little bit. Here we have it, the main title, Sinister. Like I said before, the use of serif, forgive me, is very effective here, and I really like the decayed effect they've actually applied to the text, as though it's set into the wall and is spreading some form of wear down the walls. Note that in this instance the title isn't all that big, actually, if we just zoom out, show you in context of the rest of the poster. There's a lot of space to the left and the right, and this partly probably comes down to the empty, abandoned feeling the creators have gone for with the backdrop, and also probably simply to prevent the poster feeling cluttered with such a prominent main image down here. So yeah, down below the title we have the slogan, very important part of the poster actually, and one that you might overlook when analysing it. So obviously again we've got the serif, we've talked about that already, but what I found really interesting here is it does appear that these words are very slightly larger than the rest. If we zoom out, that becomes more apparent. They really stand out. The him and the nothing are kind of the most important parts of this phrase. So I think making these slightly, almost imperceptibly, but not quite imperceptibly larger helps kind of hit home the punchy message of the slogan. It's a catchy and ominous slogan. It doesn't reveal too much. No slogan really should. It should just leave more questions than it answers. Notice that whilst small, the slogan is actually really close to this main title here. It's literally directly below it, and the reasoning for this is, I guess, that if you look at the main title, you're probably going to see this and you're probably going to read it. Like, you don't really have much of a choice in it. Your brain will kind of automatically just scroll down and read the next part, really. So the slogan itself, I've actually covered in my research before, and I really like, the catchiness and the fact that it doesn't really tell you much, but it tells you enough to give you a bit of a sense of dread on the character's behalf. The actual phrasing itself, with the whole him thing and not telling us anything else, could actually be kind of used to clear up any confusion this main image may create. Because if we look here, we see this child painting with blood on the walls, and we might naturally assume that the child is actually the antagonist, but in fact this monster depicted here is in fact the antagonist. So if we read the slogan, it helps put things into a little bit of context, and this image doesn't really show us much either, so all we have is this image and the word him to go on, and it leaves us with a lot of questions about who this antagonist actually is. So yeah, the image depicts a little girl painting with blood. Let's talk about the image, shall we? People find kids terrifying in a horror context. They always have. Kids are supposed to be innocent, and when they're not, well, you get the feeling you're going to have a bad time. By presenting a scary child to people, they get, well, scared. There's something inherently unsettling about a little girl painting with blood. It kind of goes without saying. These two things don't gel. This should not be happening, and to hit us with this right away on the poster really shows us that things are very, very wrong in this film. That's definitely the kind of feel this film's going for, having seen the film myself and knowing what the first shot of the movie is, and how quickly that hammers home the idea of this is not going to be a friendly movie. This conveys the whole message of the film very, very nicely. I find the positioning of these interesting, actually, as well. Whilst the title does take centre stage, as I said, the girl and the face are actually left and right as opposed to central. So I guess, possibly, we're supposed to look at the poster, see the title, and then kind of scan down and look at these two things. And I think this space in the middle helps this from feeling too cluttered, and helps our eyes get drawn to this. Because if we had too much clutter here, the middle of the poster might feel a bit too busy. And I think this whole spread out nature is something that really benefits from. I like it also because of I think it evokes the sense of isolation and despair of the genre. It's a trend I've started to notice in horror posters. We'll see a bit more of this whole empty feel when we come onto the Conjuring poster. Right, so let's cover this stuff at the bottom. I'm going to have to zoom in for this. So we've got loads of legal information. So I can barely make it out. This isn't that good a quality image. I couldn't really find a very good one for this one. So yeah, we've got the actors here. That does say Ethan Hawke, believe it or not. We've got the production company names. So we've got Summit, Alliance, so we've got all that stuff. Everyone involved in the creation of the film who's kind of a big name or prominent or whatever is featured here. We have social media links to pages associated with the film to allow for kind of social media marketing tactics. That's interesting. I didn't even see what that was before. I thought it was a rope. Here we have like a smashed film reel, and that is actually quite important because it does tell us that the film will prominently feature film reels in some way, which it does. The killings actually take place on film reels, which are actually haunted. Here we have a hashtag. Again, this kind of furthers the whole film's social media drive, if you will. We've got all the production company logos here, as well as just the names. Film age rating, very important. Yeah, need to have that on there for legal reasons. And then coming soon, and a website link. So usually, were this poster one that was released later, the release date would go here. This is generally where the release date goes on a poster, down in the bottom middle here. But obviously this is quite an early poster, I would imagine, so we don't actually have a release date yet. If you look at this, just a website link, again, it furthers the marketing push of the film. Ultimately, it's pretty simple stuff, and a lot of the stuff is shared across the genre, which I find is quite a help. So let's just pan on over to this one. In fact, let's put them side by side, and we'll have a look at. They are quite similar, aren't they? And I'll keep this one here for reference, kind of think of it, because I will be referring back to it again. So let's move on. The Conjuring. Wow, not going to lie. When I saw this one plastered about in cinemas years ago, it actually genuinely made me uncomfortable to be in its presence. That doll, man, that's not nice. That's a sign of an effective horror poster. So once again, let's work from the top down. I'm just going to zoom in here. If I can just... Right, there we go. So, again, we've got a very similar way here of advertising the film based on James Wan's previous work. That's who is the director of this movie. So, yep, that's again very similar to this one. They do this a lot. Like, there's no better way of putting it. This is a thing that movies in general, not just horror movies, do a lot. If you notice, Insidious comes up here again. It's a very big name modern horror movie. If they're in any way affiliated with it, they're going to basically ram it down your throat because they want you to know that they've got some good credibility behind them. Saw as well is exactly the same argument to be made there. So, yet again, we've got the film titles in bolder. Actually, I forgot to mention that before, I believe. We have here and here, the film titles themselves are actually bolder because they're the important part of this whole thing. That's worth noting. We've got the vignette. We've got the serif for the same reasons as outlined before. This vignette is again done kind of in-universe, if you will, like stylistically. It's like grime on the walls. It's really quite horrible. It's a much darker, more claustrophobic vignette on this poster, though. The colours are equally, desaturated and bleak and dull. But I think this poster feels more claustrophobic as a result of this encroaching darkness around the edge, which is interesting. I mean, it might have to do with the self-contained nature of the threat in the film. I mean, everything seems to take place in this one house and the surrounding area. And it's almost like the house is where the horror is. So I guess by kind of sectioning this in, we get a feeling of kind of contained horror, shut off from the outside world. And I'll come back to that when I talk about the slogan. We get a real feeling that something's not right when comparing this to the setting. They're kind of incongruous. The walls are really, grimy and horrible, and even worse so than in the Sinister poster over here. And then we have this girl sitting here with this horrific ventriloquist dummy. Oh god, I can't bear to look at it. So the girl has her back to the viewer, which is interesting. It adds an element of mystery, but it also helps us identify the real threat or antagonist in the image, which is the dummy. Whilst the girl looks away from us, that creepy dummy is staring right through me, and it's creeping me out just talking about it. It sees me. There's a lack of red in this poster when comparing it to others in the genre, including the Sinister one. There's a little bit of red here. It's not much, but I guess it being there is still beneficial. Like, we still get that little splash of red. I think were it not there, the poster would lose its effectiveness a little bit. And I'll be honest, I can't quite put my finger on why it is. I think the red connotes blood, like, instinctively, and just having a little tiny bit of red on the poster is enough to tell us that something is threatening. It's become such a trope of the genre to have red in the marketing material that I think they need to put it in there somewhere, otherwise you might confuse it for, say, like, just a really dark, gritty, moody film that isn't about supernatural, horrible, murdery things. The kind of toned down nature, however, might actually be based on the fact that this film is supposed to be more believable than the average horror. More on that later. Now we arrive at the title, so zoom in on that here. And it's everything you'd expect, really. These sharp, menacing hooks on the letters really make the title seem threatening. The word "the" is predictably smaller, as it's the least important word here. Text is white, which maintains the bleak feel of the poster, and it also stands out strikingly from the grimy black background. The colour white can also be seen to connote ghosts in the supernatural at a bit of a stretch. Yeah, it is quite a stretch, but if you were theoretically going through the thought process of why they chose the colour white, you could make that argument. So now we move on to the slogan. Just like the Sinister poster, this has its slogan positioned just below the title, right here. So the phrase itself, based on the true case file of the Warrens, is bound to create a sense of intrigue in prospective audiences, as this makes them think elements of the film may have really happened. So, again, moving on to this stuff at the bottom. We have the same legal info as the Sinister poster, only this one actually has... Oh, interesting. Yep, we have the same info as the Sinister poster. Still no release date. If there was a release date, it would go here. I'll provide examples of that. Again, the website's straight under the coming soon. This is kind of to, I guess, give people, once they see the coming soon and they want to kind of consume content related to the movie before that time, they can go to this website, which is positioned straight underneath, so we'll definitely bear that in mind when designing our own poster. So obviously there'll be more poster related stuff on this webpage, but that concludes this video. Yeah, done. Bye.